Hi,
And
everybody. My
so,
name is Toli Shulman. I am a co-founder and CEO of Cogbias AI. I'm being joined by Matt Altabelli, our Chief Science Officer.
hey,
Uh,
Tully, let me set this up real quick too. By the way, I can't tell you how many people I go out to and they talk about, oh, well, AI is biased. Not nearly as much as every single person in humanity, like right, but it is certainly a big issue that many corporations are concerned about. That's preventing a lot of the projects to be going on, right? And so that's why I asked Tully to join this, is because there is scientific ways that you can do this and make it even more safe and even less biased than it already is compared to humanity. So, all right. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to throw that out there, Tully.
no,
Go ahead.
please. So we're Cogbias AI. What are we? We are a comprehensive cognitive bias detection mitigation platform. That means our platform actually analyzes, detects, and helps you mitigate biases in your questions, answers, emails, almost any form of communication you can think of. Uh, Unlike a lot of the AI platforms today, we are actually powered by cognitive science expert data models that we're developing versus the standard general models that you see out there. A lot of folks consider us like the trust layer for every method of written and generated communications. And I'll talk more about the use cases, but I want to kind of get into the problems a little bit. Uh, the biggest problem is honestly, and I'm sure a lot of folks have heard this before, garbage in, garbage out. We ask questions, we ask questions with obvious answers, we ask questions to confirm our ideas, we ask questions framing our ideas. Why? Because we don't want to ask questions that will actually tell us things that we don't necessarily want to hear. The same thing with our emails. We write emails that are not as effective as they could be. We make statements that promote unintended reactions. You write an email and you get somebody responding in a defensive manner, and you don't know how to react to all of that. And emails that don't make the sale. Frankly, we know that email communications are one of the biggest elements of making the sale, of being able to convince your prospect to make the decision that's going to do it. The way we kind of look at all of this is we know for a fact that bad questions mean bad answers and they lead to bad decisions. Currently, there's really nothing out there. So what do folks do? Whatever answers you get from your surveys, your customer discovery, your emails, you take them at face value and you make decisions based on the data you have. We're here to resolve that. And how do we do it? As I mentioned, we're an AI platform. We help folks with every possible way of communicating. Currently, in the market, our solution allows folks to do customer discovery, questionnaires, surveys, and other things. And the difference with us is we actually use context to provide the direction. So you can tell us exactly what you're trying to do, what you're trying to find out, and we will help you look at the questions. We'll analyze them. We'll give you recommendations how to write them differently, and we'll break down the things that may be problematic in your actual questions as you have them now. I'm sure a lot of folks on the line have used the systems such as Qualtrics, Stone, and a few others that help you auto-generate questions. And that's great, but have you ever wondered where did those questions come from? What are they based on? What's the actual topic that you're trying to solve? And I think that's the main issue that we've discovered, because the problem is people think, well, how do we make it not biased? There's no way. We will always have bias because that's what makes us human. But the difference is we can reduce the harmful biases and increase the ones that are going to get you the reaction that you're looking for. The same applies to when you look at emails. You write an email to your team, or you write an email to a boss telling them that you're leaving. And this is a proper example. And a lot of the time we hear the story of never write an angry email. Cool down first before you write the email. Wait 24 hours. With our platform, we can actually mitigate a lot of the issues that you'll have, the biases that are driving the way you're writing, and help you write a better email. We'll help rewrite the email for you. We will also provide you with full breakdowns. And again, the idea is the same. We give you quality assurance for more effective emails. Coming soon, we'll actually be able to score the effectiveness of your emails to let you know these are the things you could change. So in a way, this is not just a platform to detect and mitigate. This is a platform to train. And they're real results. Some of our earliest users have seen things such as, the length of voice of customer research has been reduced by up to 46% with some of our users. They've reduced the amount of vague answers they get in customer discovery, and vague answers are one of the biggest problems. Because if you get vague answers, it extends the time you'll have to do more customer discovery until you actually find directionality. We help with that. We've also seen folks reduce the complexity of their marketing research surveys, which again makes it simple for them to execute it faster, reducing the cost of their market research and giving them better results. So what's next? Well, the bigger things that are coming our way, especially in 2025, we're going to be integrating with a lot of the leading platforms you're thinking about, such as your Outlook email, Gmail, your Gmail. We're going to be going to Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey, Suzy, Salesforce. Honestly, the sky's the limit. And our team, just the executive team alone, is stacked with the sort of folks you want to have solving this problem. Matt Altobelli is our chief science officer. He's a cognitive sciences professor. Our CTO is Chris Costello. He's a PhD in intelligent mobile robotics. And then there's me. We try to help folks solve the answers. And the biggest things that we can do is show you how we get it done and do it faster. And if I can now, I'm going to switch screens, and what I'll do is I'll give you guys a little demo of what we're capable of, if that's okay.
We like demos.
Oh, I know. One of the things I wish you could do is literally switch things right on the screen, but unfortunately, you have to move things around. First, disconnect, then reconnect, which I guess is science in a nutshell, I suppose. One second, I have it up now. Oh, Wi-Fi. There's never a smooth way to do these things, is there?
Are you about to show
So while
any
you're doing
version
that, how is AI improving or making or worsening bias? When you start thinking about all the solutions, all the platforms that are coming out there, what's the dangers of AI as far as bias? And then what are the benefits of AI for bias?
Hey, Matt, you want to take this one?
Sure. So it depends on what you're talking about when you're saying bias, because when people are talking about bias in AI, they're kind of talking statistical model bias or bias in data, and it's depending on like what you're using it for. We had a conversation with a guy last week who wrote a paper about AI and bias and which cognitive biases AI is better at than us, and which ones that it still falls victim to. A lot of it has to do with the programmers themselves that are programming these models, because we tend to program our bias into the models. For example, he said that the availability heuristic AI is better at, which is like the availability heuristic is the first thing that comes to our mind tends to be the thing that we believe the most about. So like if you hear plane crash, or planes, for example, and plane crash comes to your mind first, there's a reason for that. And it's usually because like in news and stuff like that, when you hear about planes, you really only hear about accidents or crashes. They never really report on successful plane landings, right? But if you had a model that you were training and you only trained it on information about plane crashes, it's still going to bring up that availability heuristic when you input planes, for example. So what we try to do, and again, like Toli said, you can't really get rid of biases, and these aren't biases that we have. What we're doing is we're trying to mitigate the biases that you give to your recipient of your questions, of your emails. How are they going to take this? Because you don't want to lead them to answer a question in a certain way, because that's usually garbage data that comes back to you. So we want to mitigate or really limit the biases that you're activating in your recipients, so that you're getting good data and you can make more informed decisions, kind of curing that miscommunication problem that we have. I don't know if I answered your question the way you thought I was going to, but
No, it's fine. I think it's good. But okay, so basically your product's going to help more on that than necessarily if let's say I built a recruiting tool that was looking and identifying different candidates and ranking them and as far as candidates. the bias that's within that ranking is not necessarily something you're going to help with. But you would be able to help if there was a recruiter sending a question.
Correct.
Right.
So if there was going to be bias in the questions in the way that it was going to rank those individuals, this could detect that and tell you that you're biasing the questions and your rankings might be off, or you might be showing favoritism towards certain candidates, which in some cases you would want to do depending on the role, right? So there's biases that'll help you as well, which is why we're working on kind of a scoring platform where sometimes you want to invoke like the availability heuristic, for example, because you want the first thing that comes to their mind. So those biases in those instances could be helpful, and we want to be able to identify that to help you get the data that you're looking for.
Yeah, and our goal really is the idea, like, and what Matt says perfectly appropriate. The criteria is what's most important, because at the end of the day, when we consider how do current solutions work, every time you hear AI for something, the underpinnings are usually having to do with prompts. And the main philosophy now is that prompt engineering has become its own computer language. Whereas before people had to learn Java, now they have to learn prompt engineering. And while we want to believe everybody becomes a prompt engineering expert, that's just not true. And when I was just actually yesterday, I was at the Salesforce Agentforce World Tour event over in Atlanta, and I asked the question, because Agentforce has become such a huge tool for them. How do they make sure that their chatbots don't give out biased information when they're, say, coaching the salespeople on better ways to write an email, or suggesting questions, or recommending things? And they really didn't have a proper answer for it. So that's why, in a lot of ways, we're looking at what we're building as a security layer that allows you to validate the stuff that's being said, because you actually wanted to say what you meant for it to say, versus the other way around. So now onto our demo. What you're seeing now is actually, you're probably some of the first people to see this. The reason why is, while we have a version of this already available, this is our brand new one. It's coming out January 1st. And I wanted to kind of give you guys the preview of the new, fresher look. And the typical user screen is what you're seeing in front of you. We have voice of customer, we have different projects, and you can create any project you want. It's as simple as clicking, seeing what the projects are, and being able to decide, do I want a questionnaire or do I want an email? Down here below, you put your project name in, you write your project goal, and you write your project description. What's neat about that, it's just not just filler so that you can read about it. It also lets our system start thinking about, what are you actually trying to get out of a particular survey if you're doing a questionnaire? Or if you're writing an email, what are you trying to achieve with that? Once they start understanding that, a lot of that goes into the directions. To make it simple for demo purposes, I pulled some actual real questions from voice of customer research surveys that we've seen. So I could show you how this works. The way our system operates, the best way to kind of think about it is it's underpinned by expert data models. And what it does is it analyzes questions. So I can pick one question to analyze, or I can analyze all. In this case, I'm going to analyze all of them. And while it's going through the process, and mind you, artificial intelligence and Wi-Fi don't always mix well. So it might take a few seconds. But what is happening during this time is it's analyzing the structure of the sentence. What's neat about this entire setup is, considerations such as, well, if I put proprietary terms in, will it cause issues? No, it will not. The reason why it will not cause issues, because our system does not train itself on your proprietary terms. Our system trains itself on the sentence structure. Our favorite terms are actually adjectives and verbs, because that's the stuff that actually gets us moving in the right direction. And as we progress through, you can upload hundreds upon hundreds of questions. So you can take a look at all sorts of options and see what's out there. So it looks like we have our first batch of results.
I will say that we're still bug hunting on this. So.
Yes. So for instance,
there's a reason it's not in production.
In this question, what factors matter most to you when selecting a company for sneakers? This is actually some of the voice of customer research from Nike. And what it immediately did was it actually detected the biases. And you can see full breakdowns for every single one. The availability heuristic may cause respondents to only consider factors related to their most to the most recent experience of buying sneakers or features of sneakers that were particularly prominent or memorable. So in this case, because you're saying this, they're going to only remember what's memorable, not necessarily how they buy sneakers. Confirmation bias. So what it does is it breaks down. Now, what's interesting is our users have shown interest in both the breakdowns and the recommendations. So we have recommendations, right? Because one of the most important things in anything is to be able to recommend the better way to say it. So this one, what we do is we reduce certain biases and move them along. So is it suggested rephrase? This one says, what are the main aspects you consider to make you choose one sneaker brand over another? Or could you share the key factors you look for when choosing a sneaker company? When thinking about your preferred sneaker company, what are the core factors that drive your decisions? So as you can tell, it can go down the list of anything. And the neat part about the whole situation is, as it analyzes things, it learns more and more about what you're looking to select, what you're looking to use. Each answer gives you the same. Each answer gives you the same setup of how you should ask a better question. And what it really does is, when you look at the biases found, it's focused strictly on the element of this is how the person who is reading this question may perceive this question. And that's a very important consideration. Now, what you're not seeing here, but what's coming up really, really soon, is our email client, which will allow you to write any email and be able to get a full breakdown of what's problematic with the email and other things. What else is possible with this questionnaire? With this questionnaire system, you can import and export files. You can export them in CSV files, PDFs, whatever you wish. In addition to that, we also work through things like recommendations of how to make yourself better. Remember, we talked about the idea. Not only are you going to just use the system to get better answers, to be able to ask better questions, you're also going to get educated as to what may be problematic on things. In this case, consider rewording questions to minimize the use of the availability heuristic, which is appearing consistently across your survey. This bias has the potential to skew data towards more recent or memorable events. Be mindful of confirmation bias, which is also prevalent in the survey. So we give you the breakdown. So for instance, if your marketing folks are writing lots of surveys and sending out surveys and analyzing surveys, they have a better, more salient and clear way of being able to see, is this us or is this our respondents? Where's the issue lying that we're not getting answers that, hey, maybe we weren't expecting, but also if we're getting vague answers or ineffective answers that don't help us make a decision one way or the other. Now, something that we can't show you yet, but only because it's literally being wired right now, is our email, where you'll be able to write up emails and see breakdowns and other things. We should have this available the first week of January. So we're in the final sprint of getting this finished. And that's my demo. Do you folks have any questions?
There's nothing like cutting it close over the holidays.
I know, right?
Yeah. So let me make sure I heard something clear, because I think that's important. And so again, going back to my earlier question, you're not necessarily going to help if somebody's got an algorithm, help look and decide if it has bias or not. But if somebody's prompting something, you can look at that prompt and determine if there's bias, if the result would bring back bias.
Well, we'll put it this way. In a way, if you think about it, even if they're writing up an algorithm, they're going to have instructions, right? So if the brief to create the algorithm has biases in it, which may cause the programmer to do an algorithm in a certain way, absolutely, we can look at that. We're very good at checking criteria. Some of our earliest customers, what we found very interesting, were using our product for very different ways, in very different ways. We have 3 financial institutions, 2 of them being hedge funds, that were operating on the aspect of utilizing our system to check their investment memo questions, because they wanted to make sure that none of their analysts could game the system and get them to invest in things which they were not necessarily convinced about. We had the Fortune 500 company representatives who were using our system to look over their entire framework for their project management systems, because in each project management system that they have is a set of questions that have to be answered for the project to keep going forward. And so they started running those questions through and adjusting them as they saw the subject matter of the project change. So it can go in any which direction. That's just the question part. When we're talking about emails, we're talking about, I mean, a myriad of use cases. We've had in the early testing, we've had our emails being used for sales opportunities, for HR related documentation, for folks writing up, pitches and other things. As we're progressing forward, and what's coming at the end of Q1, which I'm very, very excited about, is going to be our very first chatbot audit tool, which will allow us to audit chatbot conversations with customers to understand if the chatbot is doing several things correctly, and that is representing your company correctly. Is it being biased and pushing a customer one way or another, which you did not intend for it to do? Are the prompts that it was given biased and causing it to be biased? And those are the things that are most important, and that's why I actually attended Agents Force
Are you
yesterday.
doing any voice? Are you like, I'm thinking call centers? Like
Yeah,
you got call agents.
that's coming. That's coming. Right
Yeah,
now,
we're working
our
on that
time.
right now.
Yep.
We have we have the voice technology. We're just trying to figure out how to get it quickly and like analyzed, because when you're on a call or something,
Yeah.
you want that feedback pretty immediately, so you can either
Right.
pivot the conversation or things like that. As Totally said, we got the chatbot one coming out. That one, again, kind of more to your point, we'll be able to see, I guess, if you are coding a chatbot, you'll be able to recognize some biases in that. When we have the capability of doing that right now, we're just working on the user interface, because we have run chatbot models through and they worked perfectly, but now we have to make it usable for people. But yeah, the voice stuff, it should be hopefully coming sometime next year as well. So for like Zoom
Yeah.
calls or these type of meetings and call centers.
And the thing that we're also going to get to much sooner than the actual real-time voice and audio is, a lot of companies now transcribe the sales calls they have with people, and they store it, and sometimes the sales managers will review it. And that's all great, but the sales manager reviewing it still suffers from the same issue that any human does. Maybe they recognize certain questions as being biased in the wrong way, maybe they don't. And here we'll have a situation where our system will be able to actually analyze the transcription, figure out where the biases are happening, figure out if they're affected for the end result, and make suggestions on how to train a salesperson to be more effective. So those things are coming our
Have you done
way.
any studies that look at what the increase in revenue or effectiveness of using the tool is? Like, in other
So
words, your
we've had,
call,
sure, we've had early results, and particularly where we've had 10 results that are actually quantitative, in other words, numerical, and not just our users telling us, wow, I really felt far more certain about my research. Several of our customers do voice of customer research, which is a very, some of you folks may be familiar, some of you may not. That's a very particular type of brand analysis and market research. And a lot of the time, the main issue with voice of customer research is if you're getting vague answers, if your questions bring up more questions, then you end up having a very long project. Several of customers reported that they dropped their timeline of doing their voice of customer research from 15 weeks to 9 weeks. And a big part of it was thanks to our tool, because they said one of the things that happened was we were far more certain about the questions, and we noticed there was a huge increase in the clarity of answers. And so voice of customer has been the very most effective. With our financial institution folks and others, they just wanted clarity in the questions they were asking. Their main consideration point is, have we been screwing up? And if we have, how do we fix it?
no, but if you're a client, if you're like let's say you're selling it to Coca-Cola, and
Sure.
you can go into Coca-Cola and say there's a 22% increase in clarity, and however you would measure that,
Mhm.
and then that results into a 6% increase in revenue. Like the more I find, the more hard stats you'll give in something like this is the easier you're going to open a door.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. And that's actually, we have several in progress right now where we're trying to quantify some of the results. We developed this initially. A good way to kind of look at it is this was initially developed as an internal tool for us.
I got
It
you.
took on a life of its own when folks started realizing its effectiveness. And I don't know how many folks in the audience have read books like The Mom Test or Thinking Fast and Slow and some of these others. Companies spend billions of dollars on cognitive bias training and training to be more effective salespeople, marketers, etc. And while all that stuff is really good, the problem with the human mind is we're not machines. We can't just automatically identify every single aspect that's wrong. So we're a tool that enhances that opportunity and gives people a much easier way of going around it and being certain in the questions they ask.
Okay.
And that's really the main push we're going for. But to your point, yes, we're in process right now getting a lot more quantitative data. Probably by February or so, we'll have several more hard numbers available.
Think of it more as like a kind of a risk mitigation tool, as in, if you're asking the wrong questions and you're making decisions based on that, you could waste a ton of money, invest a ton of money in a product that nobody really wants. It's not a pain point. So for like customer discovery, for example, are you asking the right questions to get to an informed answer about how you're going to spend or invest this money?
No, there's value. I think there's value on the revenue side, and I think there's value, and certainly on the product side. How valuable is it to get a product right? How would you quantify that?
Well, a perfect example for you. So in 2009, I was working with Novartis Consumer Health. I was one of the brand managers that ran the brand Theraflu. When I came to the company, I had come in at the tail end of a 3-year project. They were developing a new flu detection kit for the home. And up to that point, they'd spent about $17 million in marketing research, analysis, and pre-manufacturing spending. And so what ended up happening, they were continuing on and they were planning to launch in 2011. So about a month prior to launch, it was canceled. And the reason why it was canceled was because a month prior to the launch, some of our biggest customers, such as Walmart, CVS, etc., went through the process of asking their actual consumers in a panel study how many folks who actually think about the flu detection. And they realized less than 4% of all people actually were even considering it. But when we looked at the marketing research questions that were being proposed for Novartis, that were being asked, and that we spent millions of dollars developing, these were questions like, would you want to know if you had the flu? Would you want to know if you had the flu without having to go to the doctor? It was the equivalent of my wife asking me if she looked fat in the dress. There was only one logical answer. And unsurprisingly, everybody agreed that they wanted to know if they had the flu and they didn't want to go to the doctor. So with 98% approval, everything was greenlit constantly.
Right.
And so $20 million were spent down the drain. And that was a small project, mind you. So there's a lot of these. When we see a lot of the product failure, whether it's new companies or new products, more than 85% of the failure can be based on cognitive bias. Very little is actually on failure, infrastructure failure, or manufacturing failure, or programming failure. And because of that, when we come in is we help people make better decisions because they're able to potentially get better data.
Yeah, they ended up scrapping that project because nobody wanted it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's open it up. Is there anybody out there who got questions about cognitive bias? Everybody understands Crystal? Hey, Carlos. Go ahead, Carlos.
Can you hear me okay? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, no, my question is, it's actually quite interesting. I really like the work that you have done in the bias, right, on the chat. I think that is an extremely well-needed service. We have spoken to a couple of other organizations that supposedly have a solution, SaaS-based, but I don't think they were, let me just say, as mature with their product as I believe you guys are. What is how do you inject yourself into a product that already exists? Because I see your solution as almost like a bolt-in, something that you can add on to an existing OEM. Is that the kind of like the direction that you're also going?
That's correct,
Yeah.
actually. The standalone platform in a way is strictly almost a proof of concept and testing grounds for a lot of folks. What we're going to be living in is, plugins and bolt-ins and the things you use every day. Whether it's your Microsoft Word document, a word processing tool, whether it's your email client, whether it's your marketing research tool such as Qualtrics. The idea is we're going to try to position ourselves to be everywhere you are. A perfect example is the early discussions we had with Salesforce is potentially creating a layer for Agentforce, which would allow Agentforce to actually create, propose things that are validated for cognitive bias versus just spitting out things based on general AI knowledge.
Can you, Carlos, I'm sorry, go ahead. Do you have another question, Carlos?
No, that's good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll put
I
myself on
didn't
mute.
mean to interject, but you got me something. One of the times I got in trouble doing an RFP because I didn't realize the company was heavily, heavily Mormon. And maybe a couple of the examples we used weren't what I would have used if I'd have known that that was Mormon in nature. So can you set parameter like country cultures or, South versus North, geographical, you know what I mean? Can you kind of set your parameters based on those types of demographics would be the word I would use, but it's more comprehensive than that.
I mean, you can, and that would be something that would go into probably the project description and stuff. So when it's taking context into consideration to only give back those types of contexts, the expert models that detect the biases aren't really going to be affected by it, but the rephrases and stuff would based on those contexts.
Right. Like, like I used an example of caffeine, which is not necessarily really frowned on in the Mormon spec,
Yeah.
Sure.
So, if it had known it was to I guess religious organization, it would have been nice to have somebody say, hey, don't use that. Like, not a good example.
Yeah.
Right. Is that right? Could y'all do that?
Yeah, we can. Thing is if you were using our tool and you didn't know that they were Mormon, you wouldn't have been able to put that in there, right?
That's a fair point.
So if it doesn't know, it's not going to.
Yeah, it's a fair point. That's a fair
Yeah, the element is we definitely can't predict, but the one thing we can do, and that we're going to get to that level soon enough, is actually start giving directionality on which way an answer may go based on the question you ask.
I gotcha. Lily.
Yes, thank you so much. My question is, how do you correct the bias caused by truthful data? I can give one example. So let's say that we have a customer survey about a event, and let's say we have about 1,000 customer, and only 2 or 3 customers mentioned that the conference room was too cold. So it's because out of 1,000 customers, there were only 2 or 3 customers expressing the concern that the conference room was too cold. And the data on this feedback is very, very few. So do we see this feedback is biased, and how do you correct it? Did I make my question clear?
I'm going to clarify it and tell me if I'm right a little bit.
Yes.
So, I'll give context in it. If y'all weren't earlier, Lily's a data scientist on the HP marketing team. And so I would imagine HP has many a survey and many a type of thing that goes out to massive amounts of people, right? And you'll get some one-off answers and other things. How do you deal with those kinds of extreme circumstances where there's a few? Do you highlight it? Do you not highlight it? Lily, did I explain as my thinking right?
Yes, typically when we analyze the survey data with too few observations, it may be just ignored. Out of 1,000 customers, there are only 2 to 3 customers saying that. So when we're analyzing it, many algorithms just ignore this feedback because it's too few. So, but it's also valuable feedback. So in that process, how can we overcome that kind of data bias in order to capture all the feedback correctly?
Yeah. So the thing is, like, so that type of survey question, right? It would go out before you have that data. And what we're trying to do is get you valuable data, right? So if your question was about the condition of the room and only 2 out of 1,000 said it was too cold, that's
Oh,
probably
yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Probably I misunderstood the previous use case. So in our use case, it's kind of the freestyle, the user input feedback. So there is no question. We just ask, do you have any feedback for this event? So it's kind of a free text input.
So I
gotcha.
don't, help me if I'm wrong, Matt, but that would be you are not necessarily analyzing the answers for bias. You're adapting the questions for those. So if there was no question, you couldn't really, you're not going to do analysis on the answer.
With the exception of our like chatbots, because that'll analyze the whole conversation. But with like market research questions, yeah, it's so like we would recommend that you wouldn't use a question just as open-ended as give us feedback on like the conference of the room, because if you were looking for specific data, because again, it's going to elicit that recency bias or availability heuristic where the most salient information comes to mind, unless that's what you want. So you would want to put those questions in beforehand based on whatever type of information you wanted back, but we're not going to analyze. It is something we talked about, is to like analyze the answers to see if our rephrases and detection software is working properly as far as like getting you the valuable data that you want, and like to come up with some sort of like score, like, yes, this new survey that
I think that's
you
valuable,
integrated.
Matt. I think that would be really valuable, because if you think about it, how you recognize bias in an answer and the answers, and you can even analyze questions that aren't yours, and where was the bias, where were the bias and answers, what were the cause and effect, right? I mean,
Exactly.
shoot, almost
So like that would be the value in our tool, and that's something we've been talking about a lot on the back end, is how we can verify that what we're giving is good, and it's going to come down to the data that they get back. So again, when we're talking about like integrations and stuff, how Grammarly is like integrated into everything. If you're using your survey tools and you're sending it out, we would also like to be integrated in the responses to that, so we can analyze that data and be like, okay, these biases are still showing in the recipient, or maybe they're not showing, so then our rephrases work correctly. So that's something that we're trying to come up with scoring with that.
he was supposed to be on here, but he traveling. But I have a friend that actually, he's at the end of the year, he's leaving he was the data officer for a billion-dollar company, but they're wanting to be the next Survey Monkey with AI, right? And so remind me and I'll introduce you, because it might be something that you could integrate it easily with what he's doing as well too. Yeah, Carlos,
Certainly.
go ahead, please.
Hey guys, me again. I'm gonna actually turn on my camera so you can see me.
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, the question I had was like, how, and I get this all the time, right? How do you position yourself in the market, and what's your target customer? What's your, like, if you were to tell me, okay, I want to talk to this type of organization, what does that look like?
So depending on the functionality, right now the way we've kind of seen it is our question and answer tool has been very much a favorite amongst market researchers and product management functions within a variety of companies. Out of the, say, 200 or so early users we have that are operating in our beta, more than 60 Fortune 2000 companies with a variety of industries. Typically, product management side, lots of market researchers and product managers and those elements. Well, like I said, we also have folks in the financial arena, such as hedge fund managers, FP&A folks, etc. We've also had a big uptick.
Research labs as well.
Yeah, that's true. We also have been having a lot of capstone project research being done utilizing ours. And so those are the biggest pieces, if you think about it, that are the earliest. Now, as we go into chatbot analysis and others, our client base is going to be very varied. In other words, from a company like Salesforce, they're looking for a tool to improve their bots. For other
So
companies,
are you going after enterprise accounts, or do you
Correct.
with like enterprise accounts? I get it. Okay.
So, but it could be mid-sized companies as well. That's the thing. The good thing and the flexible thing about our platform in itself is the fact that it's lightweight. It doesn't require heavy integration. It's only as heavy as the client wants it to be. In other words, if they're looking to use it freestanding, they can. If they want to integrate it with their favorite market research tool or email client or anything, really, we can work that through.
Can
Yeah,
you
I-
drop your info on the chat so we can stay in touch?
Certainly, I can do that.
Yeah, if you look at Tiger, anyhow, you may not know who Tiger. He was founder and CEO of one of the big top 10 Indian firms in the world. He's kind of doing other things now, but he laid out. I had a LinkedIn last week where he laid out kind of the go-to-market strategy for most companies like this, and he explains that mid-market is going to be your market until you get to a certain level of sophistication, and then move up to the enterprise, right? And I would think mid-market's going to be your target for the next year or two until there's some tipping point, right? And his point is and then when you get to one brand, then you can go after enterprise, right? So because if
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's definitely kind of that's the way it's looking. The one caveat I'll give to that, and when we look at mid-market, I mean, there's so many different classifications. Like we're in discussions right now with an insurance company, and they're actually, and when we talk about use cases, their particular interest immediately fell into their customer service group because they wanted to understand how they can start checking it to see if the questions the customer service folks are asking are legitimate. And if they're actually providing
I'm actually glad you said that because I was about to ask somebody a question. So give me 1 second and then we kind of got to wrap it up and I need to move on. And I'm going to switch the order. I'm going to have Chasm go next. David Breedlove, are you listening or you there or in the background?
Affirmative.
Hey man, first of all, how's your health? You good?
Doing better today, man. I can see straight. Thank you.
Good. I'm thinking about this and that, if we could do a call, with all your call agents, if we could kind of do some kind of AI agent for some of the outbound calls, at least some of the preliminary questions. But I'm thinking, this could probably take out a lot of the bias of the questioning. Now, my question to you, Matt and Toey, is, can this be personalized? So in other words, let me give you the scenario. I'm coordinating care for people. They have different healthcare outcomes, right? They have different things. They didn't need to schedule different things, right? And so every call is going to be a little bit different because you're talking to a different person, with different conditions, different backgrounds, different economic, different culture, right? Can this be personalized en masse?
So when you say that, are you talking about the personalizing, like asking different questions to different people?
Well, not necessarily questions. Like the people can ask questions, they can still grade it, right? But again, going back to the different geographical and nuances and such stuff like that, right? Like it might know that you have you might be a cancer patient from Texas, right? And a very low income thing, right? And that's going to change. That's going to change it versus if I'm talking to Toey and Toey's in New York in an affluent neighborhood, right? That's gonna
correct.
It's going to have some change.
Put that as much information as you can about what you're doing and your goals in the description box of that, and it'll personalize those the suggested questions and rephrases and everything, and even the biases based on that information. So yeah.
I would think you would standardize. You could be able to say, okay, this location. You can have AI basically pull that out and fill that out, where you're not having every agent have to go in and type that out.
Yeah, no, you can have instances where honestly, if once you start formatting your inputs to a certain way, You can have like, here's Bob. Bob lives in the Upper East Side, New York City. Bob is suffering from type 2 diabetes. He's this and that. His history includes this. Almost like, you know how when doctors
We can
use
just write a
medical
bot. We can
charts.
write a bot or agent to go pull that information off each record and go fill that in and then write it based off of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just click,
Good,
or just
yeah.
click. You know, with enough interface work, we can
Yeah.
have it click and you know, import.
You
Anyhow,
would want to really think about security in those instances, though, if you're doing stuff like
Yep.
that.
oh yeah, yeah.
But,
So, all right,
but you know,
hang on,
HIPAA
David.
is
I was
definitely
thinking,
doable.
I was thinking about, David, that might be something that would, increase the effectiveness of the conversation from your call center outbound.
Yeah, it sure might. I guess when you're trying to optimize answer rates, connection rates, duration of call, some analytics we could use there.
Yep.
And then, what types of questions are people balking on? I mean, we already know some of them. Some of them were required to ask in the course of the survey, but yeah, I see some, plus there's, once you get into the call handling and so forth, maybe something like this could help us out.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. I need to think through it, but I think there's
Yeah.
a play there.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I need to think through it.
And we're
Well,
happy.
guys, anybody,
we're
any
happy
other
to
questions
custom-
for the guys before we head out? Last chance. And anybody, and again, we're going to do follow-ups. I'm going to follow up
Sure.
with all, everybody, not just here, but everybody that was on the list and see who wants to do a deep dive. And we'll probably do a one-on-one with, a handful, 12, 15 people and y'all be the only one on that one. We'll get into a deep dive. So,
No, I look forward to that.
I'll be doing the follow-up here pretty quick. We're losing people quick. So let's move on.
Thanks, Tommy.
I should have probably thought about that on a holiday weekend, huh? All right.
Thank you.
Let's
Thank you.